Hello and welcome everyone. For the first time on Arm Wrestling News channel, we have East versus West middleweight champion Mr. Paul Linn. How are you doing, brother?
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So amazing. I mean, I wanted to talk with you, but in the beginning, I thought you were busy. Maybe you didn't get the chance to like do an interview or something. So I didn't want to disturb you, and then I kind of got sick. But this is the first time we have the champ here. So guys, in this video, we will discuss about a few topics. First of all, a small brief recap of East versus West 6. Then we'll talk about King of the Table, all three matches, and then after that East versus West 7 because Paul is competing there as well. He won the title by competing against one legend and then he's going to defend against another. So, brother, East versus West 6, please let me know of your 5 best moments from East versus West. They can be shocking, they can be interesting, and they can just be wow moments. Not necessarily in order, but what were your favorite moments from that event?
Well, my one of them is definitely Doug and Coach Brett, and part of that's because I'm buddies with both of them. And the lead up to that while we were there was interesting because they was poking at each other the whole time. Between Doug and Mendaugas and Coach Bray, we ate breakfast and lunch and stuff together for a good amount of time, and they were getting after each other as far as trash talk and everything. So I was really looking forward to that match, and I roomed with Doug, and I know how serious he was taking it, how bad he wanted to win. So to see him go ahead and win that match was the kickoff for me. Another moment that stood out to me was Barbora and Gabby. Obviously, I'm rooting for Gabby because she's on the West, but Barbora's, that match was just epic. I mean, I think sometimes women's arm wrestling gets overlooked just because of the gender thing, but that was one of the best matches of the card. And then her reaction, her emotional response at the end was great. Um,
Let's quickly talk about those first two moments. So, Coach Ray versus Doug Ehrlich. One thing I've realized that trash talking is not necessarily that you can really learn that fast. At least not in a short period of time. If you are someone who has had a really soft childhood, not that tough, you weren't the one who was involved in fighting and talking and everything, it can be difficult because Ryan Bourne, you would assume he would be able to trash talk well, but he was like really nervous. He couldn't even speak at the press conference when he was against Coach Ray, and Coach Ray couldn't do anything against Doug Ehrlich on the microphone. So there are levels to this trash talking game as well. Like we saw Devon versus Travis Bajent. Every single time, Devon Led wouldn't even like open his mouth at all when Travis was against him at the table. Like it was all Travis. Then Devon slowly developed his game.
If you break that down psychologically, I think the people who, and I'm not a big trash talker in this sport at all. But I think a lot of it subconsciously might have to come down to your actual confidence level. Like I think when your confidence level is high for most people, it's believable. It just flows. It is what it is. If there's doubt in your mind, then sometimes it shows. And I think the people who are best at it, like Travis, are the ones who are best at masking the doubt and making it believable. And even one step further, when they are least confident, their trash talk game is at its best. But that's the 1%, the 1% of those guys that can do that. For me, it's easier to just say less and do more.
Yeah.
But it is. You look at why is Devon selling pay-per-views? Because Devon is the most amazing promoter that we have in the sport. So there is 100% a place for it, and it's definitely entertaining.
And if you're talking about Travis is confident, I remember a podcast, I think it was 3 years ago on Voice of Arm Wrestling channel. Travis was there and Engin was there. Engin kind of asked that, what was your last match against Devon Lett on the left arm? He said WL 2015 or something like that. And Engin was like, what was the result? And Travis was saying, I couldn't tell Devon Lett from my wife left-handed that.
Yeah.
That's next level confidence.
Yes.
Yeah, but I was surprised. Why would you go forward and try to catch someone without the straps? It clearly looked like Coach Ray could have slipped that. It wasn't like he was totally controlling his hand and he couldn't really slip. He was going forward trying to catch. Why would you make the mistake 3 times in a row? Why wouldn't you just go back and slip?
I think there was a power gap there, but like if you re-review that match, which I do this all the time. I make stupid mistakes. I hang on outside the straps. I don't go. I bail on the game plan. It almost looked like Ray either was confused about what the game plan should be against Doug because Doug was an unknown quantity, and I think like round two where he got top rolled, I was scratching my head as to what he was doing there.
Yeah.
Because Doug wasn't, the plan for Doug was not to clean top roll Ray. It was basically a high hook. And watching round two finishing outside the straps with a clean top roll, I was like, what is going on? I do think there was a power gap, but I think Ray could have closed that gap a little bit if all three rounds were strapped. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. And the rematch between Barbara and Gabriela, Engen has already said that he would offer that match to the ladies. It needs to happen as soon as possible. Do you think there is any way that Gabriela can make a comeback?
I think anytime you got data like that, like larger opponent, longer lever, having trouble keeping your hand, but knowing your side pressures in place. I think that now that she knows, I think she can make it a match. And I think that the straight side pressure power, arm strength goes to Gabby. Her hand and arm is just shorter and smaller. You know what I mean? So is there a lane for it for success? Yeah. But I think it requires once this hand goes, once that wrist flexion's gone, as we saw that match wane on, you're left with pulling without your hand and just side pressure. If she could get past that second round without taxing her wrist that much, if she could pull in the setup and protect it and stay flat wristed and never go negative, I think she has a solid chance of winning a rematch. But Barbora's scary because she's young, and I mean, shoot, she's not going to get weaker, and she's not going to become a worse arm wrestler. So, if there's a chance for Gabby to have, a better result, the sooner the match, the better.
Yeah. And I still think for some reason that someone like Aglevet that Gabby defeated in the previous East versus West event. Gabby just swept to her on the right arm. I think she being like 5'11", 6 foot tall, maybe if she gains weight, she can give some fight to Barbara just because she wouldn't have that lever length disadvantage against her. So
That's interesting too. Like,
yeah,
I mean, everybody wants to see a rematch, but it kind of would be nice to see another match in between.
yeah.
But I don't think there's going to be. I don't think as of right now, there's going to be any ladies on this coming card, unless something changes. I guess we'll see.
And the third favorite moment.
Oh, I mean, favorite or it wasn't my favorite by any means, but John and Irakli, the energy, whenever John's in a dogfight, the energy in the building is was so good, So like there was a ton of energy. I always get up and get front stage when John's pulling. Obviously, it wasn't the outcome I wanted, and to me, it was a highlight because you could feel the air get sucked out of the room
Yeah,
when John pulled Rackley. And I said, one of the other things too that really sticks out to me is I remember in the fourth round, I was right front stage, like right below where you can see in the camera. I'm yelling at John and everything. And at this point, John's in control and has Rackley's hand, right? So he had already done that in the previous round. And it looked like Rackley was getting ready to quit, right? Like submit the match, be done. And John has his hand, and you'll see a moment if you watch it where Rackley shakes his head like this, like he's done, and then John kind of smiles and he goes for the preemptive press
yeah.
outside of his shoulder, not where he normally does, and Rackley didn't give up. And I remember talking to John afterwards. I said, I saw what happened there in the fourth round. He baited you. He was like, yeah. So it's interesting because that to me was the momentum swing in that match.
Yeah.
John was in complete control. Rackley gave basically a signal saying he was giving up, and then didn't give up.
That was kind of a shocking moment for me because Irakli's wrist was like this, and John had not only he was going for a press, but he had some cupping as well, and he was going for the press like this, and he still couldn't finish. Like
Yeah.
that was surprising to see.
Well, how who expected that from Rackley? You know, who expected Rackley to be able to pull in a flop? A guy who has some of the best back pressure and hand control in the sport of arm wrestling. Who would have expected him to be able to win in a flop? So yeah, to me that was a big highlight. But it was also like a momentum swing for the feeling. Like there was at that point, you know, with my match looming, I had a lot of positive energy. You know, and we had real good team camaraderie this event too. I mean, like Craig Touye and Monster Michael Todd and Corey West. Corey West is my boy. You know, Doug's there. Good team camaraderie. And then when like the John thing happened, it was like, uh-oh. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
need some positive momentum moving into this one. So that was a highlight for sure. And then Corey's first match I really enjoyed too. His first match. That got a little bit heated. There was some back and forth, and the energy was good. And it was because I feel like, you know, the Turkish guys have home field advantage, and that was the only time. Like normally, I'm right down there center stage yelling with a couple other people, and they're all guys from the West. When the Turkish dudes came to the table, their whole team rolled to the front of the stage. We're like elbow to elbow, you know. So
Yeah.
the energy right then, is when it really started to pop off.
Yeah. And I kind of felt bad for Farid in that event because making a comeback in super matches in arm wrestling and home crowd, and he lost both of the matches. Farid Osmanli, and Travis was saying Farid Osmanov and Osmanli, he was kind of combining those two there. And Travis is serious about this commentary thing because he's reading comments. Can you believe that Travis is reading comments and he was giving stats like 90% people, 99% people were saying positive comments about my commentary. He's
Yeah.
going back and he's reading the feedback on his commentary and then arguing or with Artem on his live that he is the greatest commentator alive.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Travis has got a business agenda, right? You know, so like I don't know if he's going to try and extort Angen for some more money on Seven or what, but I know he pokes at Angen all the time. Like I was talking to Angen the other day, he was like, "Is this guy even coming?" And I called Travis. I said, "Are you coming?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm coming, man." I guess he
Yeah.
told Angen he wanted like more money,
Yeah.
or I don't know, but that's how Travis is. He's building his brand at all times. But he did a good job, man. I thought the energy was really good. He was, other than mispronouncing some names, you know. But he's talented in that aspect. It's undeniable.
Yeah, and your win against Rustam was obviously amazing. In the first round, like the first ready go, you went forward. You didn't go back in the first ready go, if you remember. And there was a foul on Rustam in that round, and you were kind of equal
Yeah.
in the hook. But then I was surprised that you even in the second round you kept going back. I was really already expecting you to shoot forward in the second round.
Well, the first ready go that I got to jump one, I went straight side.
Yeah,
Um, and really, I went straight side because of the way the strap was set. Like I felt it, and like when we readjusted and everything, and then we wound up in the rest grip, I felt pretty good. I felt like I had my back pressure intact. Like I didn't need to make a shoulder backwards move to gain center or stay center. So I just went high and side, and I got the ready go. Then after like when we get ready to do the restart, you see Rustam do a lot in the strap, right?
yeah,
You see a lot of movement, and I lost what I had. You know what I mean? And that's the beauty of the strap pulling. Like you sometimes you have a lean and sometimes you don't. And the plan was to be in a hand controlled hook with back pressure and try and control center. To me, the thing that really derailed the first two rounds for me was how good Rustam's bottom two and containment were against my back pressure. I'm banking on him having to come forward, right, to get his supination and cup. His hand was so strong that he didn't need to come forward. He didn't have to go full shoulder commit because his hand was fortifying all of that.
yeah,
So round one, like I've said it before, if I had to do the whole match over, round one would not have changed. I would still have the same game plan in round one. In round two, no, I am not going to do a straight dragging or whole hand topple. I'm not Tim Bresnan. We learned that firsthand. So round two is where the changes would be made. So
yeah.
like I don't see any instance where that round one would have gone my way unless the first ready go was let go, unless there was no elbow foul. And that first one, I believe, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think Rustam fouled off the front,
Yeah,
which
off the
means
front.
he was coming forward,
Yeah.
which is what I wanted. So I would have done round one the same. Round two, I would have thrown out the window. But you
Hmm.
live and learn. Like I said it, and it's funny because the commentary really lines up with it. Basically, if I asked 10 people in preparation for that match, 9 of them were saying, you better top roll this guy. You cannot hook with him. So when you hear that for 10 weeks in preparation, you start saying, all right, we're going to have to stay outside.
You know,
But it wasn't until I got there that Travis was like, listen, man, do what you're going to do. But if don't, you must at some point in time, if it is not working, come forward. And Neil said the same thing.
and
So, I mean, you live and learn.
you know what Engin told me? I was discussing like maybe 3-4 days before the match, and I was like, Engin, what should Paul do to win this match? Should he top roll? And Engin said, top rolling Rostam is like suicide.
It's
Is
impossible.
it's suicide? That's what that's what Engin told me. And that cupping just the
I think
fingers.
top roll the guy, I think Ermes is like the only one.
Ermes top rolled him
Who's,
here near the
yeah,
pad, and you mentioned Tim Brezhnev. Tim also top rolled him here. Yeah,
which was why that was my emulation of that in round two and why it looked so bad. The weird part of it is, there was a little stop at the bottom. Like there is a lane there. I don't possess that open top roll ability. That's not my forte. It's not my comfort zone. But there was a little stop there, and his wrist was flat. So I see how somebody who's better than me in that lane could get a stop or have success
and then Michael versus Angerbayev. I wish somehow magically Michael forgets to speak English during a match. Man, whenever he loses, he talks a lot. If he's winning, he
there.
wouldn't say a thing. But when he's losing, man, his game is completely off. And how
Well,
calm, composed Angerbayev was, that was amazing.
yeah, it was. He looked like a true professional. And the Kazakhs as a whole, like if you were at that event, they were the most professional team by far. Like not even a close second in sight. They came with their warm up suits on, their national stuff. They all ate together. There was no real interaction. The only thing, the only thing that surprised me about them was the weight cut issue in the Mindaugas match. Are you privy to that?
No.
Nerdle came in something crazy like 10 kilos over. Did you know that?
No, no.
Yeah, I don't know what the exact weigh-in was, but it was interesting at the weigh-in time.
75.
Like,
Yeah.
like basically all the Western guys are sitting waiting for 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. whatever it was to roll around so we could weigh in and go eat. And there was only other person that was there was Rustam, and then Mindaugas came. Like none of the other Samusha, Nerlet, none of those guys were there ready to weigh in. So, we weigh in, get the heck out of there, go straight to the breakfast and start eating. Come to find out, when Dalgas weighs in, come to find out, I talked to him, I guess, at lunch, and he was like, Nerlet didn't make weight. He was way over, to the tune of over 15 pounds. And Engen told him, look, you got until the press conference to make the weight. So I think he went running and sweating out about, 15 to 17 pounds.
Wow. And that's
That
not
was
a
the
big
only
guy.
thing. You guys are professional, all except for that. What the heck?
Yeah.
But unbelievable. Angerbayev, the composure. And I think for Michael, it's a pseudo domino effect because most of his matches in East versus West have had some form of officiating, contention around them. Some of it's valid, some of it might not be, whatever the case may be. But subconsciously, that's looming, am I going to get some weird call again? And then when something happens, you can see it derail Michael mentally.
Hmm.
When he's focused and he's he doesn't have a distraction, he's so dangerous, But the minute something kind of creeps in there, it took all focus away from the actual next round because we're focusing on the previous one mid match. That's never a good place to be mentally.
Yeah.
And I mean, we talked about the parallel thing and, the open top roll King's move. Was it a foul? Where was the shoulder? Is there an argument to be made? Sure, for both sides. Me personally, by the letter of the law and the rule, I didn't see a foul. But again, it's one of those things like we got to have a short memory because there's more rounds to go.
Yeah.
And that's what I was trying to say in Michael's corner. Put it behind, like let them make their decision, put it behind you. It's like a cornerback that gets beat deep on a vertical route. He just got burnt and toasted in front of everybody on Sunday, on ESPN. You got to go out and cover this dude again. You better have a short memory,
Yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is.
To me, what shocked me in that match was, and when I predicted Michael versus Angerbayev, I said one thing over and over again in those videos, that I have not seen Angerbayev do this, get behind his shoulder and then press. Even when Angerbayev beat Alex Cordecha, he did that just with side pressure. So I was like, Angerbayev does not have the ability to really get behind his shoulder and then press. And which was somewhat evident in that match. He tried that against Michael in multiple rounds and he was not able to finish. He had everything, he had the hand, and then when he went for the press, he couldn't finish Michael. But what shocked me was that he didn't need that. He just with side pressure hits, he was able to pin Michael. And Gennady was not able to do that. Rivas was not able to do that. They both had to like completely stand tall and get over the arm and then press. But Angerbayev did that with just side pressure. That was shocking.
What was so impressive of Angerbayev, obviously, his transitioning to patience. I think the table IQ is so high, but also his wrist fortitude. It's really hard to keep a positive wrist or a flat wrist against Michael. And his ability, to surge a little bit and just stop when it gets flat and then come back, keep his wrist positive, in the early rounds was really, really impressive. And I think, if you're going to go into that deep water with Michael, you have to either totally commit to the across the table flop wrist like Rivas, or you have to take the other route and don't let your wrist get totally compromised and wait the game out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I amazing. I mean, Angerbayev, if you like say like most impressive overall,
Yeah.
like the guy, somebody that heavy, you shouldn't be talking about like pound for pound best, but like just watching him is like watching like figure skating or something,
Mm-hmm. And on match day, Michael was like at least 15-20 pounds heavier than Angerbayev. I heard that somewhere.
Oh,
yeah,
he had
20 pounds. So last moment about East versus West. I was kind of disappointed by Georgi Svetkov. Like why couldn't he just stand up and finish the match? Like he had Jerry like this, completely like this, and maybe an inch above the pad. But he was hanging. He was himself hanging so far down. Maybe he is weighing too much. Like he couldn't stand up during the match or what. I don't know what was the reason. He just needed. He didn't even need to press. He just needed to stand up, and Jerry would have been automatically pinned after that.
That's another highly contested match too. I know afterwards talking to Georgi, he wasn't really happy with some of the calls and everything else. But it's just like pulling Michael. It's the opposite aspect of the the King's move. The opposite aspect is the Jerry Cadorette flop. So it creates these weird problems anatomically for people. Even though Georgi was able to control center and keep Jerry from like that lane to be able to pin side pressure flop. Like he was controlling center and keeping him out of his lane. But it was one of those scenarios like he was over rotating, So like when you're leaned back all the way there to control center, it's really hard to come back up and get behind it without giving it back. And that's the first time Georgi had pulled Jerry. Mm-hmm. I would think he would have learned so much. And if this match happens down the road again, we could potentially see something different. I know Georgi was, very dejected after that match. He's such a nice guy, sweet guy. Yeah. He like brought me a bottle of wine and stuff. He's awesome too. And I talked to him after. He was very like unhappy with his performance, questioning the calls, and seemed very dejected, like he may not come back type thing. So I tried my best to be like, keep your head up and come back. Like, yeah. I thought it was amazing performance. Nobody expected it to be that close. I don't think. But he had it in his mind, like any champion would, that I am here to win. And his disappointment with not winning in the fashion in which he lost, I think created, some self-doubt or some questioning. So hopefully we see Georgi back, because I think he's got He speaks really good English, which I didn't know until midway through it. And he's got a great personality. Like, this is a guy that you want to see on that stage.
Yeah, all of the Bulgarians speak English. Like all of the arm wrestlers. Maybe Sasho is the only one that I've seen. He struggles with English. He can understand it, but he cannot speak
He's
it.
like really good. Like, he's fluid.
Yeah, and his Georgi's life would have been totally different. His arm wrestling career would have been totally different if he was the East versus West champion right now. Like it would have
Oh my
completely
goodness.
changed. Now nobody's talking about him, and then everyone will be talking about him. And he just needed that little bit less
Yeah.
pronation. He was over pronating and just a little bit more finishing power. And did you see the Facebook post that he uploaded? He said that I think in the first or second round he tore his pectoral muscle. It was completely
Yes.
black. Yeah, completely bruised.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
And there you may have your answer as to why he never came up with press. You know, but anytime you need that shoulder committed side pressure, your pec is driving the truck. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of times when you see that a pec tear and somebody keep pulling, they're committed to going backwards and less engagement with that pec. Let the shoulder be out, come straight back.
Yeah. So let's move on to King of the Table 6, 25th of February, and pay-per-view link is in the description, guys. Please purchase it. What are your thoughts about the event, first of all?
Oh, I mean, it's a great event. I mean, it's the sister event to East versus West. They got quite a bit of a different format. They're really driving their pay-per-view sales around one or two matches rather than a bunch. So when it comes to being viewer friendly and everything else, it's a shorter show. There's definitely some differences with the six round matches and stuff. Um, that's, I guess, to each their own, whether you like the 6 rounds or the 5. But no, I mean, it's a great promotion. It's core sports. If you like East versus West, you need to be mine King of the Table and vice versa. Like those promotions need to be arm in arm, and those numbers, like the people who are tuning in for King of the Table, we need all of them to tune in for East versus West as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is going to be. I mean, I'm looking forward to it for sure. I'm actually looking forward to seeing Pablo probably over anything.
Yeah. And let's start with the biggest match: Ermes Gasparini versus Levan Saginashvili. Levan is someone who I think this year he's competing 2 times. Engin said maybe even 3 times, but he cannot really. People say he doesn't compete often, but he cannot really compete that much because of his level of arm wrestling and pay-per-view. People need to believe that the match is going to be at least close to get more interested into buying the pay-per-views. Does Ermes have any chance against Levan? I personally believe that this is going to be Levan's toughest super match. I think he has had 6 super matches, I guess. This is going to be his toughest one. What do you think about that?
So I did a review on somebody else's channel the other day, and we went through it on Brandon Allen's.
Yeah.
And the general consensus out there by the arm wrestling public is that Ermes has no shot. I disagree. I think he has a shot. I think it's an outside shot. It's the silver bullet, right? It's the Travis Bajan. Like there's a lot of similarities to Ermes and Travis. Great post, amazing back pressure, strong hand, makes you hold on to him, has a great cup to go along with it, and he's fast. Levan's components in arm wrestling are so shored up everywhere. I said it. I think that Ermes has the best chance. Obviously, we know what happened prior, but I think Ermes has a solid chance of breaking Levan's round win streak. Like Levan hasn't lost a round in how long? Years.
Yeah.
I think it's a really outside shot for Ermes to win the match. I think it is a great chance for Ermes to be the first guy to steal a round. Yeah. And I think it's going to come down to wrist rise and where the hand is set. Ermes doesn't have the longer lever, doesn't have any component that's bigger or stronger than Levan, except for maybe back pressure and maybe rise, but I doubt it. So really it comes down to where's Levan going to grab straps? If he grabs him whole hand or if he dumps against him and Ermes matches the top and gets the hit, we could see a finished top roll quickly. I don't see an instance where Levan lets that happen twice. He'll re-engage he'll reset the strap in a better position and probably come back just because his components are so good. I would think for Ermes to take a round, he would have to line everything up perfectly. And then I would see Levan making an adjustment. The only other X factors there are, if he does any damage in that angle and Levan can't recoup from it. But I see Levan as the heavy favorite. I think everyone in the community does. But I do think that there's a silver bullet out there for Ermes.
Many people are saying that there is a possibility that Ermes can win the first round. But my question, whenever I hear these comments, I always think like, if Ermes can open Levan's wrist once, what would Levan do to adjust after that? Why couldn't he do that 6 times in a row?
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like if Ermes can get that top roll and create some form of damage, and when I say damage, I don't mean structural injury. I mean compromising that wrist to the point where the flexion doesn't hold up anymore. The tricky part of that is, if Ermes is winning round one or an early round, I see him doing it fast, and that's the tricky part. Like if you get top rolled fast and it's like that, like yeah, your wrist was compromised, but it wasn't held there. Like that's why like choosing to fight in certain positions is very strategic. The guy who gets top rolled and fights like this in round one never gets his wrist back. But if you get top rolled cleanly and you're straight to the pad, we could still see next round you come out with intact wrist flexion. So that's really what it comes down to. Can Ermes either pin him fast and steal around, or can Ermes flat out take his wrist because of a setup scenario and then not pin him fast, which I think is playing with fire too. Because I mean, Levan's good enough, and people act like he's just strong, but his table IQ is good too.
Yeah. And the big question in everyone's mind is, if Dave Chaffee, without even much training or recovery after the Vitali match, if Dave can take Ermes that close to the pad 2-3 times in a match, like why couldn't Levan just close that gap? Levan has to be that much stronger than Dave. But Dave's side pressure with a flat wrist, or maybe even with a slightly broken wrist, is great. But can Levan do that? If Ermes is able to crack that wrist slightly, can Levan push through like Dave Chaffee? That's the question. We have seen Levan getting pressed to the pad by Krasi and by Gennady without a wrist, but we've never seen Levan do that to someone. I have not seen Levan arm wrestle like that. So if that wrist gets cracked, it can get difficult for Levan. And Ermes is training like, he's really, I would say, passionate about this match. Like even if you talk with him personally, he's taking everything seriously. If anyone,
Of course.
yeah,
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's like somebody saying, "Hey, guess what? You're fighting Floyd Mayweather in 3 months."
Yeah.
Like this is your biggest opportunity of your life. You can take down this mythological beast. If you are not taking this absolutely serious, if this is not the Super Bowl for you, or the super heavyweight boxing championship against the greatest of all time, then there's something wrong in your head. I would expect nothing but the absolute best version that Ermes can possibly bring on that day. I think we see a career peaked Ermes for this match. Mm-hmm. And how great would it be if the scenario you just described went down?
Yeah.
Like even if Levan wins, if he has to do it in an ugly fashion, Ermes is still a legend forever.
Yeah.
If he puts Levan in a flop and Levan presses to him, Ermes is a legend. Like it's one of those deals where it's like, this is the Super Bowl for you, like Ermes. Like this is the super heavyweight world championship against one of the greatest of all time. But the pressure there is not as much. You're putting pressure on yourself because how bad you want it, but the pressure for you to actually succeed and win is low. So that means that Ermes is probably going to come into this match with 4 or 5 different bullets in his gun. Like we might see Ermes pull a little bit differently in round 2, 3. You might see he's going to try things, because you got to throw a Hail Mary every once in a while when you have a shot against the best. So we could see it go to a bunch of weird places. I don't, if Levan wins, like everybody's rooting for the underdog. You kind of want to root for I know you don't root for the underdog, but I kind of do. So I'm rooting for Ermes, and I'm really, because I don't have a dog in a fight, I'm not super passionate about it, I'm rooting more for a good match. So like if we just see some drama in that match, it's well worth the watch.
Yeah. And I think I'm correct about this fact. Ermes has not lost a single match when he has a pronation. You have to take his risk
Right.
to beat him. If he has a pronation, he will beat you. Never in. I don't think since the time when he started being top in his weight category, he has not lost a single round when he has pronation. Not in 90 kilos, 95, 100, or
Yeah.
even super heavies. He just doesn't lose if he has that pronation. And even with Dave
Right.
Chaffee, we saw he was that close to the pad. He didn't have any
Yep.
cupping, and but he had only pronation. His
He
rise
had
was,
back pressure in there
yeah,
too,
his
and
rise was also not there.
that's a piece of that though. Like I think he's so good at controlling back pressure.
Yeah,
When he gets his pronation, his elbow's back.
yeah,
Like when he's back on the back of the pad, like I felt like when in that Dave match, I felt like Dave was, because he had success with Vitali in the flop, that was his option too early, you know? Like, and because he has only, that's only the second match he's ever done it, I don't think when he chose to go ahead and flop, he didn't have some center controlled correctly. You know what I mean? It was preemptive. And that's also a product of Ermes having one of the best back pressures. You know, it's a combination of the best back pressure and pronation probably in Armas.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if your elbow's back like that, it's gonna be hard to finish.
When Hermes lost to Matt in 2019, people were saying that Hermes Gasparini's game is just from center to this side. If it goes even an inch to this side, he's losing. But I've never seen anyone that composed and calm and not under pressure at all, very near to the pad, and even against Dave Chaffee. Devon was in that position, and Devon was absolutely shaking red line. His eyes were about to pop out when he did that against Dave.
Yep.
So I think I think the first round, this is what I think. The styles are different. Vitali was doing the low hand top roll. But I believe the first round can look exactly the same as Vitali versus Levan in 2018. It can stop in the center. And then we may, first time in a long time, we may have to see, we may get to see Levan regripping in a match. Do you think that's a
Yeah.
possibility that he may have to regrip?
Well, if Hermes takes the top, if Hermes takes the post, Levan's not gonna be able. He's not gonna be able to regret. So I'm actually thinking Levan. I think Levan's smart enough that he's going to go up there and match his riser in round one. If he matches his riser in round one, we probably won't see any drama.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Yeah. And Levan is a professional. He does not want to lose a single round. Highly professional athlete. But if we talk about who is more emotionally invested in this match, it is Hermes by far. You can talk to him. I think he's watching the videos as well, whoever is posting about it, and he is ready. He wants to prove everyone wrong. Every
Yeah.
single person out there wrong. So let's talk about the next match. Denis Tsiplenkov versus John Brzenk.
It's another one, man. This thing is like surrounded and shrouded by like mystery about like where is Dennis's level. You know, we've heard Devin's take on it. We think Devin thinks he's like most dangerous now. I think Devin is really referring to the stylistic change that he's totally committed to the open top roll now and the thumb pad driven pronation, which makes him tricky for everybody and guys that maybe he couldn't beat in the past. So there's validity to that. My bigger concern is where is John right now? Because John was clearly had some issues at East versus West 6. You know, there was some health stuff going on. He never said it or made it as an excuse. It's really just me saying it, being transparent. And I know that I talked to Brandon Allen and stuff, and he said when he was with him last time, he had like a cough, that he hasn't been able to shake. So those are like, to me, those are like the intangible Vegas odds things that those odds makers take into account in the big betting sports. Like, where is John? Somebody send a private detective to John's house and see if he has a cough or a sniffle, because to me that could be the deciding factor. John was open to the match and wanted that match because traditionally over time John has said he has felt comfortable with Dennis's hand. I think Devin is banking his prediction more on the idea of Dennis being more committed to that open top roll now, and John having problems with it against Devin.
Yeah.
So I mean, John is one of the best, like probably the best on the table IQ arm wrestler there is ever. I think if there is a lane and John is healthy, I will pick John. I think probably the public, or if there were odds makers, I would think that Denis would be a slight favorite through the odds makers, but not a favorite in the polls. Everybody wants John to win. Those polls lie though. That's just popularity, and who you're rooting for. But I would make John a slight underdog, and that's assuming that he's not healthy.
You said who is winning the polls? John or Dennis?
I would assume John is for
No,
popularity, or it's
man.
really close.
That's totally wrong.
No,
Like it is not
really,
even close. It's like 25-75.
really.
Yeah, for
Okay, I
Dennis.
want John to win even more.
For Dennis. And this I found this funny post on, I think it was on Instagram, and that's a guy. He's holding his hands, and on top it is written, "Me after putting money on Dennis to 6-0 John," and it's written, "Lord forgive me for I have sinned."
Is it shutout stakes?
It looks like from this post, it looks like it is shutout stakes.
Oh my goodness. I hate Stake Kings. I don't like it. I did it for a little bit. I just don't like it because you bet like $100 to win 60 on either person. I don't like it. It's way too much.
Yeah,
Way too much.
that's for people living in US. It's horrible after outside of US. If you live outside of US or Canada, you bet 100 and you get like $40 or something.
It's really bad. I'd rather find somebody else who disagrees with me and bet with them. Doesn't make sense.
I did
Whatever.
that.
That's
I did that with Bob Brown, and Bob was like, "No, Levan is not going to 6-0 Devon," and I was like, "Yes, he will." How much are you
yeah.
willing to bet on this? And we finally
Yeah.
came with a $300 bet. I was saying that
Oh, that's a
Levan,
good one. That's a good
yeah,
little come up there.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
Bob's always betting. Bob's always betting.
yeah,
But
Bob.
yeah, I shutout Stake. I might have to get on Stake Kings.
Yeah, and Bob sent me $300. I didn't even have to ask him. As soon as the match is over, and like in like 2 or 3 minutes after that, he was like, "What's your PayPal?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "It's
Yeah.
coming,
Yeah.
it's coming."
He's really
Wait,
good. Yeah, I
okay.
heard about Bob.
So the styles, King's move is a difficult thing for John. I think we can say that. But Denis Tsiplenkov is someone who never disengages anyone from their power. He does that in practice pulls. I've seen Denis Tsiplenkov practice pull, and he would totally bully you on the table. I have never seen Denis, okay, let me work on defense game. He's like almost always center to this side. He's not giving anyone anything. At East versus West, Alex was like, he's trying to get some grip, but
Yeah.
but he couldn't.
Yeah.
Denis kept him here every time, every time. So Denis feels like a bully when he's practicing, but somehow in matches, everyone gets to apply everything they have against him on the table. Andre Pushkar was able to do everything he can until he got completely exhausted. Then Denis brought him over and beat him. Like everyone gets to use all of their strengths against Denis. And that's why I think Denis Tsiplenkov's cupping is also not looking that great. Maybe it is because of the size of the thickness of his hand, but he never really cups anyone. Like you will not see Denis in this position. He's like always flat wristed. So I
That
think,
move, you don't. That
yeah,
move, you don't need to cup. That's the weirdness of it. He'll grab low, and very rarely do you see arm wrestlers who don't want a connection between their thumb and index finger. He will grab and not even create a
yeah,
connection,
yeah,
like almost as if he's grabbing low to hook, and then he just rolls to his thumb,
yeah.
and he doesn't care if his wrist goes back. Like you can tell, he's really not. He might be holding on a little bit with his fingers. He's not really trying to flex his wrist at all. He's just committed to back pressure on front wrist.
Yeah. I think
Devin,
I think John will take Dennis's wrist in the first round. I think I'm quite sure about that. People are saying that
yeah,
Dennis is just going to.
it's weird because to take the risk there, if Devin or if Denis gets back on the pad and gets that thumb pad rotated, it's one of those deals where if you take that risk, how long can you stay positive before you're just pronation driven too with
Yeah,
a slight crack in your
yeah,
wrist? That's what I don't want to see,
yeah.
because that's when it gets ugly and weird.
And that's the position that you just mentioned where you cannot finish with side pressure. You have to stand up and then press. Yeah, finishing with side pressure becomes almost impossible from there. And that is where I can see John struggling. But in the past, John has denied Dennis everything with his hand. Dennis was not able to do anything in that 2009 Super match. I think that's John's best shot. Is it really possible to prevent good Kings movers from going into their Kings move? I just don't see that happening. Michael, yes, he may be in a bad spot where his hand is taken, but he can go in a Kings move. It is not possible to deny that. Devon always goes into that king's move. Not possible to deny, at least on the right arm. Dennis did that on
Well,
the
I
left
mean,
though.
like when you say deny it, it's more like, can you pin it before they set it?
Yeah,
You know, so like the denial is a little bit of control and a good start off a center and a really hard high cup. So like if you can totally defeat that pronation, you're not going to defeat it for a long time. That's why like you almost have to finish it quick, like Levan did
Devon.
with Devin.
Devon.
Like you got to finish it quick because the longer Devin can sit down there by that pin line, you're taking the stress more than he is. You
Yeah.
know that pronation setting in. We see Michael do it all the time. Like you said, Bristol be back, but just pronate until your opponent's wrist gives out, and then bank that your elbows at the back and their elbows in the front. So really, it comes down to let's win to go. Let's keep that king's mover from getting their elbow the whole way back and get a really good high cup and side pressure. So
Yeah.
I mean, I like when you say denial, like a slow denial is really hard.
Yeah. And when Dennis says that he's trying to peak, he's going to 100%, and right now he's at about 70-75%. So what does he exactly mean? If the peak shape is 100% and let's say 0 is nothing, so is he at 75% from that scale? Or if let's say from 100 after the surgery he went to 50% and he started gaining from that 50%, so this 50 to 100 is like a 100% gain. So in that 100% margin, has he gained 75%, or is it 75 from 0, not 50%? So what's the calculation is it? Because I'm asking this question because 75% Dennis cannot beat John. I just cannot believe that 75% Dennis can beat John. Not, I don't think it is possible.
Right. Like I hate when people throw percentages out. And Engen loves to ask people like, where are you at? What percentage
Yeah.
are you? I mean, I think it's really you gotta be really careful when you start throwing. I mean, Ryan Bowen got crushed for saying 44%, right?
Yeah.
But yet here we have all these other people giving themselves percentages. I don't know what percent I am. I know that we're never 100%. That's the one thing I know to be a fact. Are you 100%? I might say, yeah, I'm 100%. But I am not. No one's 100%
Yeah.
ever. So it's an unattainable goal. So if you factor that in too, that there is no 100%, he's saying he's 75%. Well, what is what? You know, to me, self-assigning a percentage is a little bit ridiculous and it's very misleading. And I find myself buying into it. Like, I remember Oleg Pruchenko getting ready to pull John, and he said something about like he's 40% stronger than he was last time. And I'm like, what? I mean, to me, that just means him saying, I'm very confident in my strength is. So I
Mm.
bought into it. I was like, oh man, John's in trouble. But, if you're 40% stronger than you were, I don't know. I don't like those numbers. And like you
Yeah.
said, it leaves subjectiveness. So what are we really even talking about? Am I 75% better than where I started or 75% better than when I was 2 years old? Like, what is it?
Yeah. And when Core Sports uploaded a post on Instagram, like ask questions for King of the Table athletes, and my question was like, ask Dennis how exactly is he calculating the percentage thing, because that I don't know how athletes can calculate that. Like
I
in
like that
lifts,
too.
yeah, in lifts it is possible, but do you really have a log like Todd Hutchings where he knows what he did 3-4 years ago?
Well, I mean, and it has to be a controlled situation like Todd,
Yeah.
where Todd has the same however many movements that he does. And you could, because every movement, you're going to have a different percentage gain. What do you do then? Take the average? Like, how do you really quantify it? To me, that's the best way. I mean, if somebody's asking me, what was your percentage gain while you were preparing for this match? I could tell you in maybe one or two movements. You know, I could tell you my overall body, like my overall idea of my physical strength based off of doing bench press reps, but I can't. How's that apply to the table? Who knows?
Yeah.
Bad day.
And are official ready goes that important? Dennis has been arm wrestling for more than a year now. He's practicing, but he has not had a ready go since 2018 Devilette match. Are these that
Not
much
for him.
important?
Not for him. Ready goes are really important at the beginning of your career. But once you've gotten to a point where you've done, hundreds, thousands of them, I don't think it really matters. And I think, seeing him pull with Zauer and some of these guys that are jumping on him, like he's getting enough of that initiation,
Yeah.
that I don't think it's going to be an issue.
So prediction for this match. Last match, I think you said 5-1 Levan, and this one.
Man, oh, this one's tough. I have nothing to base this on, but I'm just gonna call it 4-2, 4-2, John, and that's just me like being biased.
I have like
I want
5-1 Dennis
to
maybe.
go.
Yeah. I have
Yeah,
5-1
5-1.
Dennis, and I think this match people are really underestimating John. I think this is closer than what people think. It is not going to be a clean sweep in my opinion.
Right.
At least the first round is going to be extremely competitive. Okay, let's hope John does well. Final match: Pavlo Dervedyev versus Sevin Bedulescu.
Yeah, I think this is a really good, interesting match. And it's funny how the match transpired because I was approached about the Saban match. I might have told you that. And basically with my schedule and everything going on, I basically just said, first off, I'm 220 pounds, and Saban's huge. So like, if you want me to make this match look good, I'm going to need enough time to get as big and fat as I possibly can, and I don't have that time. So I say, in the interest of your promotion, you probably want to look at a couple other people. And Chance was on that list, and Chance couldn't do it because Chance had the Ryan Bowen match scheduled. So I think he was like the first option. Pablo was in one of my suggestions because I genuinely think Pablo. When you talk about like what we have to offer over here, this guy has mega potential, and I think he's a marketable dude. Like I think he's a good look for King of the Table, and I think he's going to be a really tough out for anyone. The only issue with the Pablo match is, when I pulled him, he felt solid in all components. But what I've seen that he has struggled with is containing top rolls, like a really clean top roll or John's ability to pronate. Saban has an open top roll style, I don't know what Saban's shape is. I know what Pablo's shape is. Now Pablo took some weird losses in tournaments since he and I pulled, which I was scratching my head about. But this is again biggest opportunity of Pablo's life. Like Saban's been to Zloty Tour, had success, worlds, all that good stuff. Where Pablo, even though he's well traveled, this is it for him. So and I know how the guy prepares. He's coming in at a 9.9 out of 10. If that 100% is unachievable, this guy's going to come in at 99, his best possible version. And then the question is, where is Saban? We know Saban was one of the most recent people to beat Levan. He tore Travis's pec. Like Saban is the man. But what Saban shows up, and then how bad does the weight disparity play in? So there's a lot of questions. I think that Pablo will be the stronger human being. I feel that Saban may be the better arm wrestler, but I think that this one could wind up being really, really good. What I hope we don't see right away is Pablo beat himself against the open top roll. Like overcommit, get his wrist compromised early, and then we see something one-sided. I hope he pulls the first 2 rounds really smart, which I think he has the capability to do.
I think King of the Table tournament was in October, if I remember correctly. And if that Sabin shows up, Pablo is going to beat him for sure. Because that Sabin needed like 4 or 5 surges to pin Larry Wheels. Yeah. So if he's still somewhere around that range, then Pablo is going to beat him. But
I think that tells us 2 things. It tells us it wasn't a peak Sabin, and that Larry Wheels is actually getting really good. And I can tell you that from seeing him pull out in the West Coast against Brezhk, left arm. Larry Wheels is getting real good. Like all the days of hating on him and throwing shade on him has to be over. He is coming into his own. He's actually a legitimate problem. Saban made a video about it afterwards, basically confirming that, look, he's no joke. But I also don't think that Saban is going to come into that version. Yeah. Because it's been so long since Saban got a big opportunity. So I think we're going to see a pretty good version.
Did you watch the recent True Power video? What John said about Larry Wheels?
No, I don't think I did.
So John said that Larry had a super match with Dustin Allen. He beat him. After that, he had 3 or 4 practice pulls, and John was fresh. Then John arm wrestled him. He said that I let him a little bit too much rope, and I tried everything I can, and I couldn't stop Larry from there.
Yeah.
And that's Larry when he had a super match and 3-4 practice pulls, and John was fresh.
I said it at the beginning of this. I mean, you can probably go back to interviews and they'll find it and quote me. When you take someone who has extreme genetic potential and an already established athleticism and strength background, they will transcend much quicker than us average people. And we can't be insecure about that, you know? Like, we can't throw shade and say, get Larry out of here. No. Larry's good. Bring Larry in. But we also have to understand that there's weirdos out there everywhere. It's every sport, you know, and as you watch sports really progress, you see more and more, and then that bar gets raised. And I think a lot of people are scared of the arm wrestling bar being raised rather than welcoming it in. But guys like Larry Wheels are the ones who are going to raise the bar.
But then what would you say to guys like Khalid Jashel who were saying openly on a podcast that Larry is not made for arm wrestling?
What does that mean? What does Khalid know?
Like he does not have what it takes to reach the top level.
Why does Khalid know that of anyone?
Because he has beaten Larry with less amount of training than Larry Wheels.
That means that he does and Larry doesn't?
I guess so.
I mean, listen, Khaled's also gifted too, but we're talking about, like, that's me going and asking my 7-year-old, you know, like what he thinks about a 40-year-old. Like, it's not a valid. Khaled doesn't have the experience to really comment on that either. You know, like, does Khaled really know what it takes to be a great arm wrestler? Could he be? Absolutely he could. You know, is he willing to apply that time? He's he's in the same boat as Larry. You know, if he's saying that Larry doesn't have what it takes because he has other things on his plate, then I get it. But to say, oh, Larry doesn't have it because of whatever, his hand isn't big enough or something, that's nonsense. None of us, we know the genetic potential. We know the physical starting point. He 100% has it, depending on how he commits, you know, and he's not at his peak yet. So, I mean, you know, if Devin made that comment, I'd probably hold a little bit more water. But Khaled's only in the same amount of time, whether he beats him or not. That's like me going to practice with two new guys and a new guy telling me, you know, some high level stuff. Like, I don't
But
hear it.
but Paul, let me change the question. If a new guy comes who has been arm wrestling for 1 hour, he weighs probably less than you, and he beats you in a super match, and then he says that Paul is not made for the top level, what would you tell that guy?
Same thing. What do you know? That just means you're physically gifted. It doesn't mean that you know who's made for what, you know? So, like, I've spent my whole life battling physically gifted people, you know? That's part of competition in sports, because physical gifts tell you that you have the potential. What you do with that potential and those physical gifts is up to you.
Yeah.
But for somebody to say another physically gifted person doesn't have what it takes, they better be talking about their work ethic or some other thing. Because if you're physically gifted, you have what it takes depending on how much you're willing to put in. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I find these comments really weird. Not the one that we just mentioned, but I read a few years ago about Jeff Dabe, and that guy was mentioning if Jeff Dabe really trained like a professional arm wrestler, he would be number one. And as like work ethic is a part of being number one. If you have the genetics, but you don't have the work ethic, it means you are not number one. So that's why I said under that comment, like, whoever can be number one in the sport is actually number one in the sport. Because if you don't have the work ethic, it doesn't mean, it clearly means that you cannot be number one. And people are like, no, it isn't like that. And it's like that for me.
If someone's saying that, like, back to Larry Wheels, if somebody says Larry Wheels doesn't have what it takes to be at the top level, and they are referring to a lack of work ethic because they know something I don't know, then it's valid. Like, if he's not going to have the referring to, then I would, it holds water. But if it's has anything to do with, like, well, he doesn't have the potential because he couldn't beat me, that doesn't hold water to me.
Do you know
he can get better at an exponential pace if he chooses to.
Do you know Andrei Smaev? He's that Russian 24-year-old guy. He's like 115, 120 kilos, and he does like pull-ups with 150 kilos added on top of that. Like, he's a real strength freak. Like, he has chin-up or pull-up records like He has some records like 150, 155 kilos, and he's been arm wrestling a lot. Like we saw him against arm wrestling against Denis, I think against Irakli maybe Ivan Metushenko, and he's also getting into arm wrestling. And Devon made a video about that. I think it has almost 1 million views or something. Levan said about the same thing about that Andres Maev guy, and Levan said I don't think he has that potential to ever be on the top.
Well, see, again, I consider the source, so if there's anybody most qualified to be able to speak on that topic, it is in fact Levan Saakashvili. Like, I mean, he's gone from being smaller, his bone structure is what it is. His potential was what it was. Levan is the prime example of someone who has left no rock unturned and done everything that he possibly can in his power to being the biggest, strongest version of his genetic potential. So if anyone knows, like, he is the author of the book, so I would not question Levan's perspective. I love to hear the supporting reasons why, but that holds more water to me.
Yeah. I'll send you some of the videos of Andres Maev, and you will be shocked. You would say, like, if I were to tell you that somebody is lifting that kind of weights, you wouldn't believe it until you see him do that. Like, he's just crazy strong. Like, I think, just assume 120 kilo guy.
Great,
Yeah. 120 kilos guy, and he's like adding crazy amount of weights and doing, I think, 1 arm pull-ups. Like,
that stuff always blows my mind. I told you that before. When I seen Pablo do doing like 1 arm pull-ups and hangs with like 45-pound dumbbells or 45-pound weight with when he's already 260, that's weirdo stuff. But if you're making a point that, like, how much does that translate? I don't know. But is it freakish? It's freakish. Kenny Smith, a guy I trained with in Baltimore, I'm going to go train with him tonight. He's the same way. He's like a 215-pound guy that can do 1 arm pull-ups with 45-pound plate. That was the first time I had seen it. I was like, what is this? I can't even hold myself up, but I can still arm wrestle a little bit, so where's the correlation?
So guys, I think that's about it. We said in the beginning of the video that we will discuss East versus West 7 as well. Paul Linn there has a match against, is going to defend his 95 kg title against the legend, I forgot the name, Zoloev. Khazimurat Zoloev, and that is, I think that is going to be one of the closest matches out there. That has to be really close, and I'm sure Paul Linn is planning on making that perfect weight cut that we were discussing before we started recording that video. And Paul Linn on the match day is going to be like 102 kilos, right, Paul?
That's the plan.
That's the plan. So we will discuss that in some other video, maybe on Paul's channel. So please tune in. Paul Linn's channel will be tagged in the title of this video. Please go there and subscribe, like the video, share if you can, and we thank you. Thanks, brother.
Guys, talk to you later.